Now, I've never had a cat, so I've never had to work with cat distractions.
Yeah.
However, I have had rats and guinea pigs and hamsters and birds with my dogs.
Yeah.
And it's something you just have to face and train through.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're absolutely right. You can create them, but that's not going to fix the problem. So we definitely need to have a house line on our dogs, and we need to address the problem and work with the dog.
With anything, I would say it's so important that we talk about the McCann method and how we do things with any of these challenges. We don't just bring home our puppy and let them loose and let them make choices that are going to be poor choices. You know, if I have a cat in the house, I need to teach my puppy how to ignore that cat.
Right.
I need to teach my puppy that chasing that cat is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to do if I want to be successful in teaching my puppy those things is let him have the opportunity to chase.
Right.
Because every time that happens, chasing the cat gets more exciting. So it just bumps that notch up one more point every time until you get to the point where the dog is so overstimulated just at the sight of the cat that it's going to take a lot of work on your part to bring them back down.
Right.
So with the McCann method, our goal is always to get in front of problems before they become problems. So that would mean bringing the puppy in and keeping control while you build skills and communication so that you can then at that point say, no, you're not allowed to chase the cat. And the puppy goes, oh, okay, no problem.
Right.
But before the puppy understands any of our communication and any of our obedience skills, expecting them to make that choice, you know, good luck to you.
Yes.
They're going to make the wrong choice. They're going to chase the cat. That is what is natural for the dog to do. And we can't override that without giving them other things to work on, giving them training lessons.
Now, I think in there it said the cat is confrontational.
Yeah, so in terms of the cat being confrontational, I have no advice. We're
the dog end.
We're the dog end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I've never had a cat, but you know what? If my cat is being confrontational, I might put my cat on a house line so I can control my cat. You know, we tend to let cats just do their own thing, but I think I would ask, why is my cat being confrontational? Like is the cat a danger to my puppy?
Yeah. I've actually had a few cats in my life. My mother was the epitome of the crazy cat lady. So we got raised on cats and then we moved to dogs. But I actually wrote an article about cats and dogs together and how you can make that relationship very harmonious. And in it, I talked about the idea that the cat will often determine what kind of work you need to do. And it took me back. The article basically goes into a story of my sister bringing home this little white alley cat that his name was Roger, and she loved that cat. He was a very prancy, delicate cat, but he didn't take any crap from anybody. And he didn't go out of his way to be like confrontational or not so nice cat, but he would stand his ground. So at that point, she had 2 cats in our house. And this was when we were still living in my parents' house together, so many years ago. And Quincy was a young dog. I would say, I can't remember. She was probably like 8-ish months or something. So still in the learning process. And of course I was too. So she came along a little bit slower than my other dogs in terms of training. So she was probably still a big work in progress at 8 months old at that point. But so my sister had brought home this new cat, Roger, and she already had this other cat, Billy, who Billy was incredibly skittish and never came out of the bedroom, basically, especially when Quincy was out and about. So Billy was the cat that would run from Quincy, and of course, Quincy would want to chase. Whereas Roger was the cat where this is the funny part of the story.
Right, yeah.
So Quincy at one point decided that she was going to hot tail pursuit with Billy up the stairs. And I don't remember what the scenario was with Quincy. I just remember the scenario with the cat. So I don't know if my sister was watching Quincy or if I was just dropping the ball in terms of controlling Quincy at that point. It's entirely possible. I was young in my training. But basically, Quincy started tearing up the stairs after Billy. And Billy, of course, immediately took off and ran. Whereas Roger jumped from the top stair where he was sitting as Billy was passing him to the second stair and did that big cat thing, right?
With their back up.
And went, you will not chase Billy, basically. That was Roger's message as this delicate little white cat. And Quincy, who was, 70-pound Rottweiler, tough dog. But when she got that message from the cat, here's a good point about leadership, right? A good point about you don't mess with the leader. So this was Roger's reaction, and Quincy went, oh, and immediately stopped and turned and walked back down the stairs. Was like, yeah, no, I'm not messing with that thing, because that thing just like came at me and said no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the cat is reasonable in that confrontation, then I would probably appreciate that lesson,
that's fine
right?
for the cat.
And I'm going to back up the cat.
Right.
So if that moment was now, because I don't know if hindsight, if I would have understood this or not, but if that moment was now and I saw Roger do that, I would be getting after Quincy too. No, you leave that alone. You knock that off. You do not bug that cat.
Right.
And then I help add weight to Roger's statement saying, you do not get to chase that cat.
Right.
Even though he was just a sweet little cat himself, but he was
Yeah.
bold. And
he was the leader.
No.
Yeah.
Whereas Billy would have turned tail and run anytime Quincy was close. So there was never a message that said, you will not chase me. It was actually an invite to chase from Quincy's perspective.
Yes. Yeah. No, so that's exactly. If your cat is being confrontational in a non-harmful manner like that, or even a cat that gives a swat at a dog, you know what? There's consequences in life. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and I think sometimes it's about whether the cat can actually get away to someplace safe. And if they can, I'm sure that most cats would choose that instead of choosing to actually take on the dog.
I like Roger.
Yeah,
I like
Roger was a good cat.
I've often thought that when I've watched a dog chase a squirrel, I've often thought, what would the dog do if the squirrel just stopped and just came at the dog?
Rolled up its sleeves and went, all right, you know what? I've had it with you chasing me.
Because I have some dogs that maybe would have taken on the squirrel, but I think a few of my dogs would have went, oh, okay, you're in charge, sorry. Because my pet rats, when the dogs sometimes would, I left the pet rats' cage open quite often. I had a huge, big, elevated sort of cage for them. And so they could come out of the cage and walk on the roof, and they couldn't go anywhere. They would just walk on the cage. And sometimes the dogs would come and stick their face, like they had a little hammock or a little rolled up wrap they slept in.
Okay.
And the rats always bit the dogs on the nose when they did that.
Yeah.
And the Honda learned immediately, never stick your nose in the, after one little nip.
Yeah.
Cowboy took a few nips to finally get it. And she had a few times I'd see a little dot of blood on her nose, and I'd say, hey, you had your face in the rat cage. But they learned to respect those rats, and I was able to have the rats run around on the floor in the living room, and the dogs be loose, and the dogs gave way to the rats.
Yeah.
The rats were definitely in charge.
Yeah. You know what? Animals are pretty smart. And if they think that there's a threat that might end up causing them harm, like instinctually, it's important that they not get in fights, because fights could lead to damage and death. Like there's an instinct there for the dog to avoid confrontation in most situations. So if there's clear information that this is not acceptable, then they're going to take that clear information. But of course, most of the time, that stuff falls on us. And as humans, we need to make sure that we think through this scenario before we just let our puppy start chasing the cat.